Turns out there aren't any Christmas songs with the word fairy tale in it, so this will have to do. And the boys, the NYPD Hello and welcome back to the channel, and we're in for our fourth Christmas beer of the year, this time from Brew York. Every year since starting this channel I have reviewed at least one of Brew York's Christmas offerings. They do the Fairytale of Brew York series, which this is, and the Nightmare of Brew York series, which is, well, this, but normally imperial stouts and bigger, heavier beers. Sometimes I've done one from each, sometimes I've just done one or two random ones. This year I'm going for just the one. I've gone for the one that I think has the most potential. Brew York are one of those breweries that they feel like they promise a lot, but sometimes, well, I've not always been that enamoured. But in general, their Christmas series have been pretty decent. This one, though, is Fairytale of Brew York Milk Stout, a rich Stroopwafel with caramel and subtle cinnamon spicing, coming in at 4.9%. Now, you'll have to excuse my very red ears. I don't know if you can notice. It's been very cold here recently. I've been in and outside doing stuff, and, well, this has happened, and I can't seem to cool them down. So anyway, I've been wearing a hat for a bit, and that is the event. So not Rudolph's red nose, but the Grummy Beard's shiny red ears is what we're going for today. But we're here for the beer, of course. Rich Stroopwafel with caramel and subtle cinnamon spicing. That reads very well. That's why I bought it. I thought that sounds absolutely fantastic. There is heaps of info on the back, as you normally get with Brew York beers, but we won't get into that just yet. We'll save it for a little bit later once we have actually tried the beer. Before we can do that, though, a quick look at the can. The artwork on these is always fantastic. There you go. That looks a bit like Central Park, maybe, or some sort of, I don't know, it's got deer in it, or maybe it's meant to be Richmond in London, I don't know. But it looks very nice indeed. Heaps of info, as I say, and then it carries on round. Always an artistic delight, these cans, if nothing else. Right then, let's get it open. Ooh, the aroma in here is thick. Yeah, the aroma in here, after pouring that big, sweet, pastry deliciousness, really, is what I'm getting from it. Hint of cinnamon going throughout. The visual, though, on that, I mean, it looks like, well, it looks like a jet black beer, that is for sure. If I hold it up to the light, let's be very picky here. No, that is, ooh, is that reflection? Maybe the tiniest shimmer across the bottom of the glass there, but in effect it is a pitch black stout. Nice, thick, foamy looking, kind of toffee coloured head on this one, slightly darker than some I've had recently. Looks fantastic though. Right then, aromas. Oh, that is reminding me of a million and one things at once. Now, don't get me wrong, my initial reaction is this is full of other stuff. This isn't showing off the base beer. This is sweet, adjunct-filled beer candy, in essence. And there is a time and place for that. And I'll be honest, Christmas is that time and place. So right here, right now, I don't hate it. I'm sure if you go back to previous videos in the year, I'd have slated something else for being exactly this way. But look, I don't mind it on occasion. I think if every stout out there is just filled with extras, then, well, it kind of becomes a bit and the same. But this is doing something a little bit different, actually. This exact aroma set I have not experienced in another beer so far. Big, sweet, kind of caramel, almost like condensed milk. Like it's that kind of level of sweetness. And got this beautiful, sweet, doughy, pastry, kind of donut churros thing. Churros particularly because of that extra cinnamon element that's in there. I'll be honest, it's been that long since I've had a Stroopwafel that could be exactly what they smell like, and I just can't remember. So for all intents and purposes, yes, exactly as it says on the tin. But yeah, it is super sweet, caramel, thick, rich, lactosey. Yeah, just very, very nice. It does say it's a milk stout. The last time I had a beer that tasted this sweet, this intensely sweet, was from Brew York, and it was the vegan version of their Toncoco, in this case non-milk stout. They put milk stout on the front, so I'm going to assume it is actually a lactose beer, but if we find out later it turns out to actually be a vegan friendly one and they've used whatever additive they put into that vegan version in this, I wouldn't be entirely surprised, is what I say. It has got this kind of almost over the top sweetness to try and make up for something, but I think in this case it's just because they're trying to fill it with caramel and toffee kind of notes. But it's very nice, it's very sweet, not getting a lot of the base beer though, no bitterness to really talk about, absolutely no hop profile in there, like it's all sweet shop stuff. And as I say, at Christmas it's fine, it's probably what you want some of the time, but I'm not getting much of the base beer, but the adjunct profile, yeah, very appealing. So let's get into it, shall we? Cheers. Merry Christmas. Ooh, interesting. This really isn't anywhere near as sweet as the aroma suggests. It's all very much in the nasal cavity, that sweetness. The rest of it is bitter. I am getting some of the base beer. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'm undecided yet. We'll come back to that. But it has got this, yeah, distinct, just kind of fall away of that intensity from the aroma to leave something with a bit of kind of roasty bitterness and a bit of, I don't want to say no nonsense that because, well, quite clearly because of all the flavourings, it's full of a bit of nonsense. But yeah, some of that core beer is definitely hanging around in there, and it's going to take a minute this because I was so convinced it was going to be insanely sweet and insanely puddingy that I wasn't really ready for it. Let's give it another sip, shall we? Okay, that's better. Starting to mellow down a little bit. I think because your mind is so psyched up for something insanely sweet, when you get a bit of a smacking of bitterness, like it can feel too much, like they've overdone it, like something's wrong. I really don't think it is though. I think it's just a bit of a mental hurdle we need to get over with this beer because, yeah, it's on the aroma so very sweet. Actual flavours though, well, up front, distinctly more caramel, the kind of the waffly element, that kind of almost churro thing. As it gets further and further back on the palate though, it really just starts to peel away and you start to get hints of kind of sweeter licorice, a bit of coffee. There is a proper amount of roasty bitterness in this beer. My mind was entirely geared to come in and say that, based on the aroma, this was going to be a big sweet mess, but quite a nice indulgent big sweet mess is where my mind was. And it's totally not that. It has shocked me, and I think for the better. The sweetness, I do feel like I'm missing out, right? Because that aroma was so intense, I do feel like I want to have a sip and just be greeted with the pudding pantry door. But instead, what I'm actually getting is a relatively, and relative into the terms of the fact that it is a massive adjunct filled beer, a relatively well balanced and nice roasty stout that, well, does everything I expect a roasty stout to do. Right then, I'm definitely Stroopwafling on a bit now, so let's get into the top to bottom taste test to try and work out exactly what is happening here. So right on the tip of the tongue, light carbonation, sweet, caramel, a bit of that lactose thing. I think almost like Caramac. I know they just stopped making those actually, weirdly, but yeah, kind of Caramac if you remember that stuff. Kind of that kind of flavour. Then onto the first full third. That lactose sweetness, kind of vanilla-y bit continues. It dulls down a little bit, and actually, by the time you get to kind of, yeah, a third back across the tongue, the flavour's really starting to peel away, and you're wondering, oh, bit of an anticlimax, where's this going? Though, on the mid-palate, slightly warming, a bit of soft bitterness, there's kind of little hints of coffee, not quite got as far as licorice yet, but you're just starting to see signs that maybe this beer is going to peel away and actually show you the base product underneath. Then, back of the tongue time, much deeper, roastier, bit of licorice, dark berry kind of stout notes. It's interesting, I think if you took away all of that, the waffly stuff, the vanilla, the cinnamon, the fudgy caramel stuff that's in this, and just presented it as a dark stout, dry stout, whatever, you take this and go, it's an alright stout, it's fine, it's nothing to complain about, it's a bit roasty and relatively easy drinking. But because it's so sweet right at the front that yeah, by the time you get there, it feels roastier than it actually is because of what you've just experienced. And it's done actually in just the right way. If it was roastier, it would be a real shock. It'd be almost untenable, but nicely balances out. It does leave a slightly drying note on the palate, actually. Slightly warming again, that cinnamon kind of back of the tongue and kind of right around the back of the mouth. Just a hint of warmth there, and then onto the aftertaste. The caramel, the lactose, the caramac, the waffly churro thing, whatever we're calling it, it comes back. It repeats its stage, but it's much more dulled, much more muted. It's just a kind of a doff of the cap to that kind of noted style on the front of the can, their description. And as I said, you're left with this kind of drying, roasty, slightly fruity in places aroma. The aftertaste is a weird one because, now don't get me wrong, it doesn't taste bad, but it is leaving me like a not quite sour, not quite bitter, I don't know, something. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. That might just be me though. Again, it's not bad. It's just something that I wouldn't put down to being a good experience, but it's not distinctly terrible. It's just a bit of an oddity in there somewhere. Not sure what's causing that. But ultimately, it really isn't a bad beer. It is far from a masterpiece showcase of stout brewing, sure. But as a nice fun Christmas beverage, actually, you really can't go wrong. That is pretty good indeed. Let me take a quick look at this can then. So on the front, Brew York, Fairytale of Brew York, milk stout, 4.9%, rich Stroopwafel with caramel and subtle cinnamon spice. To be fair, that's a good description. They got what they wanted out of it. The ingredients on here are water, barley, oat, wheat, lactose. So it is a proper lactose beer. But it's also got maltodextrin in, which I think was the primary thing they used in that vegan one, so it explains why I was getting a bit of a throwback to that. Hops, cinnamon, vanilla, and natural flavourings. Always a worry. And yeast, but there you go, that's what's in it. It says, Fairytale of Brew York 2023 takes inspiration from the beloved festive treat of Stroopwafel. This year, our festive stout is super rich milk stout with the flavours of caramel and subtle cinnamon spicing. Additional lactose adds a rich, creamy body to our annual Christmas stout. Be sure to check this year's other seasonal brews, Dreams of Brew York, A Nightmare of Brew York, and Barrel Aged Nightmare of Brew York. I did check out all the others. I'll be honest, this just one that took my fancy. I wasn't that bothered about the flavour profiles on the others. The malts used are pale Crystal 150, Crystal 400, flaked barley, malted oats, Carafa 3, and chocolate. And according to them, it is a tiny bit hoppy, a tiny bit fruity, a tiny bit sweet, a tiny bit of mouthfeel. To be fair, it is quite thin. You do need to point that out. A tiny bit bitter and quite malty, which is probably why I'm enjoying it, why I'm liking it. But actually, there's a pretty... Let me show you the little chart there. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that precisely. I do think there's a bit more fruit, say, than maybe the hop profile and stuff like that. But that's a pretty well-balanced chart, and ultimately, balance is what makes great beer. And yeah, it does have that extra malt presence, which is why it's probably coming to me. But again, I think the bitterness... It's difficult. If you measured the IBUs on this, I'd be very hesitant to say they're over 30, and probably they're even below. But in terms of an experience, they're much closer to a beer that would be, say, at 40 IBUs. That's a bit of a geeky thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's just a scale of bitterness. But yeah, anyway, doesn't really matter. 2.2 UK units in this can, and that is all it really has to say about it. So yeah, it is genuinely a very nice festive beer. I bought this, spent my own money on it, and I have no regrets. I didn't buy two of them, and this is always a bit of a litmus test. Do I want another one? If I happen to walk into a local bottle shop and they had it on sale for £3 to £4 a can, yes, I think I would grab one more. I'm not going to go out hunting for another one though. It is a kind of a one and done. It's a nice experience. It'll be a fantastic Christmas Eve beer if you don't want to drink too much because you've got stuff to do tomorrow and all that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's just, yeah, a solid, quaffable experience, nice flavours, nothing bad about it, something different, distinctly Christmassy. It's right for the time of year. Buy it and drink it now. Don't keep this and then end up kind of regretting having to drink it in March because it won't be very impressive by then, I would have thought. But for now, it'll definitely do. And that really is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already subscribed, if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers. Merry Christmas.